Yeah. We'll call the Star City Council meeting to order, special meeting to order. It's October 1, 2020 at 7 p.m. Can you please stand with me and do the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call.
Councilman Hershey.
Here.
Councilman Keys.
Here.
Councilwoman Solmonson.
Here.
And Councilman Nielsen is stuck on an important thing at work right now, so he will not be here. We are doing our oral presentations tonight for those bids on the South of the River RFP. I don't know if you wanted to tell us the order and how this is going to go, Brian?
Sure, I can. So on your desk there in front of you, you'll see the order of presentations tonight on the agenda. We're going to start with Logan Simpson. They're going to start with that. Bruce is a principal with Logan Simpson, and he's here tonight with us in order to make that. And he has some team members on Zoom that will assist if needed. He's going to get 20 minutes, and then we'll go to a Q&A, and then we'll take a 5-minute break we'll get the next team in, get their technology set up, and then we'll repeat that process for the other two firms that are here tonight. Every firm will have somebody local, and every firm will also have somebody remote as well.
And then after the final presentations, we will have our discussion decision if you choose to decide tonight, and then we will adjourn. Okay. With that said, we ready to go? Are you ready to go? So the floor is yours, sir. If you could just state your name and address for the record, please.
Of course. Bruce Mean with Logan Simpson, 1306 Hastings Drive, Port Collins, Colorado. And want to thank you for being here, for allowing me to be here and talk to you today. I'm going to limit my presentation to about 15 minutes and then a short video for closing. But once again, congratulations for doing this. This is an exciting project and the right thing to do and extremely important. My background is I've been planning for about 25 years. I've worked in all Western states from Arizona to right now up to one of my projects up near Canada in Sandpoint. So, and my background is public sector planning. So I work with plans where it's got a public sector focus, but an eye towards that private side. And those are the ones I'm most successful at and really love doing. On that note, I'm not alone. You'll be seeing a lot of hard work put into this presentation, so you can ensure that you're in good hands. I'm assisted by one of the best project managers that I know in the business, that is Megan Moore. My background is planning. Megan's is architecture and urban design. So when we look at some of these things where we're talking about right sizing, making sure things are appropriate, that is Megan's focus. That's why her plans are successful. Also online, you'll see Ted Camp. That's someone that Megan works hand in hand with, and he's with Leland. Megan and Ted are simpatico. They move together in terms of planning because market and sub-area plan design have to be done hand in hand. And that is the same thing with Nick as well. And Nick is a local from Kittison. He understands the transportation system, land use, planning, market, all has to be done at the same time. And these are long-term teaming partners. They're also friends as well. A couple other people to mention, I definitely want to mention, we'll talk about a little bit about code today. We've gone through your code. We know what it takes to implement these plans, and that's something I think we should discuss to make sure that we're ready to go forward with this. You know, when I'm standing here today, the question is, why am I here? And I'll tell you why I'm here. I was asked to be here by multiple clients. They saw this RFP come out and they said, Bruce, this is one that is perfect for your firm and your planning group. We're about 30 people in a 121st person firm. They knew that this was a great match, and they said, you've got to talk to them. I've included their reference letters in the back of your packet, all of them done within the last week or so. and they're directly related to sub-area plans and implementation. More importantly is I want to also talk about one thing head on here, and that is comments from Meridian in the most positive way. Meridian also saw this RFP and said, this is a great opportunity to work together and make sure that we can create centers and areas that work together both with traffic and don't compete against each other, and really create a regional destination that outcompete other market areas that are outside of this region. And what an opportunity to bring the same team and efficiencies and a group that understands the market. One of the quotes that they said was, there's an opportunity for both cities to better plan for, accommodate, and benefit from the regional impacts of growth by utilizing a consultant experience with the unique history and challenges of Western Ada County. I really do appreciate my bond with clients and the fact that they were willing to add that to our presentation. So I thank them for that, and I expect that same relationship with Star as well. You know, moving, and I should be advancing as I go, but no, that's all me. Just moving a little bit, and you can follow along your packet or digitally, but definitely for the audience. There's always that question about that question about dedicated to the Treasure Valley. And within that graphic proposal I put in there, I really focused on you and less on us. But we are dedicated to the Treasure Valley, and we are here all the time. And that's why I'm here today. Over 50 projects by this team in this area. And these are public sector projects, projects like this. And some of the projects that allow us to be efficient and work here is not only are we working on the other side of the road on a town center, but we're also working on the current code for Ada County. And that's going to be an important enhancement for this region, as well as each community, as well as our sub-consultants working on the active transportation plan to housing plans in Boise. We understand this area very well and are committed to it. And Mira, I don't know if you're able to shoot that up a little bit for the audience as we go here, or maybe I can do that, but thank you. You know, I think it's important that you do hire someone from here in some ways, and I view myself as someone who's been working here for 10 years, so I know this area well. But I also bring experience from all my other projects and our team's other projects throughout the West. And we talked about Fort Collins, and we've talked about other places in Montana and so on. But one of those projects I wanted to point out, and you'll see Cameron Gloss's letter, the head of planning for Fort Collins in the back. He talked about the Lincoln Corridor, and the Lincoln Corridor is an extension of downtown over the Poudre River. It is Fort Collins' new downtown. It is innovation, technology, and brewery district, and includes historic neighborhoods. That was our assignment to make that plan happen. And if we move forward, you'll see the two pictures of the before and after, before we started the plan and after we started the plan. And the idea that everything has to take 20 years isn't true if you've got the right consultant and the right vision. On the left, you'll see the old golf course being graded. And then this is a street with that it would be dangerous to ride a bike or even drive a truck on. And after we finished the plan, a new bridge was installed, the bridges that overlook the river, a new park and trails, to landing a Woodward Governor, which is a 6,000 employee employment business right on this corridor. And that was one of their requirements, was having a great street and a great area. In addition, really interfacing with some busy traffic areas. There is a roundabout in there, love them or hate it. Chose to do one, but in addition, a variety of homes, innovation in sports businesses, new breweries, and then in addition, the preservation of those neighborhoods. There's also in there a bike first street, and in Idaho, especially in this area, not everyone works well with bikes, especially with some areas. In this case, a bike first street that we designed means the bikes are off the street because it's a 1 mile distance. So if you're coming from downtown and you're riding a bike, you don't want to be on the street either. But then it allows for these large trucks to be able to move freely along this highway, but allows for these new pathways to be integrated into the plaza of the street. And that's what it looks like now. It's one of the hottest destinations in Fort Collins. In addition, we plan to go ahead and do that for you as well. And we will meet your schedule by February. We also made sure within our proposal to meet your budget. We understand that those times are hard and that dollars matter. So we made sure that we did a competitive bid that really met all your goals. We plan a 3-phase project from vision, so thinking big, and then really working with our stakeholders through coffee talks, to fireside chats, to discussions like this, where we really ground ourselves on what we want to achieve and work with our folks. We also need to work with our landowners as well. They are the implementers, they are the private sector. That's how we get things done. And that's also one of our specialties. As we move forward, we'll also look at grounding this vision, making sure that we have a performer and a building program that really works. Some of the public events that we'll do on that one, it can include living concept charrettes, where we're taking the 3D model that's already developed and interacting with things as people suggest them and saying, this is what I feel like, especially when people are concerned with density. Sometimes it's not about density, it's more about design and the way things look and feel. That's what we focus on. In addition, if we're not able to meet in person, that little picture you see down below with Jennifer, our code person, that was her last year on site in Spanish Fork, Utah, for their new town center on the Spanish Fork River. This area looks like Vermont, and they're placing their town center right there. In that case, it's a real town center. She's streaming live to YouTube Live and Facebook Live and answering questions. Lastly, in our last phase, as we move to implementation, we'll want to make sure that we celebrate what we're doing and get people excited, because that helps create the momentum. And that includes creating exhibits, like one of the rooms within City Hall, where it's a room that you can go around and see different exhibits of what this sub-area plan could look like. In addition, the idea of having signs where you walk up and it's a QR code and you can interact with the design as well. We track all our public participation, so we know who's been involved, who hasn't, to make sure it represents the community of Star. One of the things that we want to do as well is make sure that we think big. So we said phase 1 would be vision. Vision starts with inspiration. And I put some of the projects there. And this time we can blame Sean here because he's not here. But the conversation I had was, there was a conversation originally about, hey, this could be like the Riverwalk. And that was from my early interviews. So of course, as a good consultant, what did I do? Put in a picture of the Riverwalk. In fact, I have not worked on the San Antonio Riverwalk. I've worked on all the 5 creeks that go into the Riverwalk, doing their land use plans, addressing flooding, adding trails, doing areas that are associated with agriculture to different town centers. The beautiful pictures you see there, though, that's the end of one of the creeks we designed. That's a San Pedro Creek. That is the better Riverwalk, because it deals with flood retention and detention, and deals with the culture of the community. So it's a better place to go. But just to correct that, I did not do the San Antonio Riverwalk. I did other creeks that went into it. You also see in the right-hand side, just below that picture, you'll see the Yampa River in Steamboat, Colorado. That was a plan I did 10 years ago, where we put in the play holes for the kayaks, as well as did the land uses adjacent to it. What happened then was the downtown flipped towards the river. So if you go there now, there's 10,000 people plus that use that trail along the river. Incredible economic development potential. We're going to do that for you as well, but we're going to start off, when we talk about vision, doing hand drawing, so no one gets mad, because people can't get mad if you're just drawing, right? But we'll start off by capturing your ideas using hand sketching, and that'll be an exciting start to the project. Moving on a little bit is that when we go forward, we're going to want to make sure that whatever we do, we're grounded in trends. And we've recently, for Dr. Cog, which is Denver Regional Council of Governments, we've done their retail analysis where we looked at all their centers and how to reposition them. We've done the same thing for all the communities, 35 centers around Orlando. What works and what doesn't work. And these are extremely important. The idea of authenticity, of moving away from traditional big box to places that are focused on restaurants and entertainment. These centers work. The idea of vibrancy and civic spaces integrated together as well as residential. The idea that digital sales are increasing at an incredible rate, but their point of sale, and so residential is still capturing that dollars. So we can focus on smaller commercial centers that are right sized, work for the market. So these are all important trends to think about as we move forward and we understand what the new retail center will look like in the future. This one is there's a lot of numbers on this one, but it's probably my most important slide. We've taken a look at your comprehensive plan and pulled out your sub-area plan. And we pride ourselves on looking at building programs and making sure that things work. And when we calculate some of the commercial potential that Star has in the sub-area, it's over-retailed, to say the least. Right now, according to our calculations, you're about 4 to 5 million square feet of retail. And that is equivalent to 20 or 30 grocery anchored centers or equivalent to 4 villages at Meridian. And we need to make sure that for developers to come here and develop the right type of thing, we need to make sure we have a right size building program, something that makes sense. What happens if you have a plan that's where there's larger colors than what can support or large purple areas? You'll find that people will start stripping out an area or dropping commercial in. And your job as elected, you'll look at the plan and go, well, that makes sense. And then something else will happen. That will preclude creating sort of this vibrant destination center. And we want to make sure that that doesn't happen, that you get what the community wants to see. Megan, you can see Megan's work right below there, where she's started to look at this at the block level. And that block level really creates a more defined building program, something that looks at a series of densities, including to going very rural and cluster development to something that's a little bit more intense. But when we look at this, we believe the area can support one nice, great center. And I think that's exciting news. Slight intensification of density, but not by much. And by rearranging it, we can still have the rural feel that people love. In addition to that, residential, I think we were mentioning that, the build out time, we're looking at 2 phases, probably 1 set of residential going in the next 20 years, but probably another 10 years before the rest goes in. So phasing is also extremely important, especially in the development community. If we look a little closer at some of the ideas that the team has been working on, you'll see this plan. And it includes a little bit more intensification of areas around the river to make sure that that center is vibrant. The idea that we push our other development down towards Chinchon and Star as a gateway to come in. But the areas along Star, they can be residential. They don't all have to be commercial. So the idea of not stripping out an area is extremely important if you want a vibrant internal center. Also, the idea of moving the center to one side of a busy road can create more walkability and more integrity to a center as well. Also using the greenways and the ditches as sort of parallel greenway systems to the Boise River. So you have many greenways as you go, and then creating new north-south greenways that connect them. And then lastly, it's the road system. I was at 20 minutes at a light today. The idea of this large arterial system doesn't work. We know it doesn't work. This is a Treasure Valley where you are stuck in traffic and you're in Idaho. It doesn't make sense. System like traditional systems that would be designed according to your plan would be about 50 connections or intersections. And in this one, this plan that you're talking about has about 250. That means the ability for no road to be too crowded, to always have different ways to move around, especially when you don't have a lot of connections across the river. So jumping and finishing up here, jumping to the town center, I think it's important that we start visualizing what this could be. So we created a 3D model that allows us to do that. That's looking at the north side of the river. And the idea that you have something that's set back a large destination commercial area that sort of is on this side of the river. Brewery, marketplace, cafe, but something that allows for a little bit of green space. And that walkway that heads to the south part of the river in downtown. Go to the next one as we come in. This is on the south side of the river. You take a turn into the town center with your new town hall set in the back. But rightfully sized, something that again sort of resembles these new retail areas that we're saying that's about vibrancy. New types of streets where they don't have curbs, and when people are not on them, they look like they're occupied, and they're sized for weather and snow. And then lastly, if you go to the last one and looking at the south, making sure that we have developments that allow for flooding and the movement of water, including boardwalk systems. In the end, I think that this also deserves a very streamlined code to make sure it happens. A code that can be maybe 10 pages long that focuses on blocks, connectivity and framework streets, the amount of open space building program, as well as flexibility for developers on how the center is done, which they can configure it the way they want as long as it meets the criteria of vibrancy. On that note, Mayor, you promised me that you'll hit the video and I'll speak to the video as best I can. But as we go here, just to give people a little bit of a taste of what could be, the idea that you're coming into your center, there is the city hall in the back with a great plaza, commercial areas of 200,000 to 300,000 square feet, just a sense of vibrancy in that curbless street. As you move down, we're gonna take a look and walk down to the Boise River here. Moving down here, there's that everyone's favorite play hole or swimming spot. And that place is the place to be, as well as a pedestrian bridge that allows people to get from both sides of town and observe all the activity that's going on. And this idea of porosity that happens on the edges, where we can make sure that we can accommodate some of the floodplain and these keystone commercial businesses that allow STAR to be the place that it wants to be. On that note, thank you very much.
Council got questions?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I have one. You said you were helping Ada County develop code.
That's correct.
What type of code? I'm sorry, they have a lot.
Yeah, that's their land use code. So we are the
Their
prime
land use.
consultant on their land use code
Thank
to modernize their land use code and hopefully make it more streamlined and more appropriate to today's age.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Keys.
so you just mentioned a 10-page code based on meeting 4 primary factors. Are you talking about amending our land use code as a separate section or changing 10 pages that's already there?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Our code folks did take a look at the code and thought that this would, I think this plan should be an amendment to your comprehensive plan. Should be something that even if you don't follow that block level plan, we can make it more into a more generalized regulatory plan with a very defined vision to inspire people. But going along with that is making sure that your code enables development to happen. So that idea that you have a code that facilitates the ease of development. That includes, not stripping out other areas, but it facilitates the development of some other areas. The idea of a short code is working for us. We've done master plans across the country. But the idea that if you get the blocks right, meaning that framework, the connectivity right, that open space right, everything else will happen and follow in suit. So the idea is people like using the word form-based code. For me, it's really about 4 or 5 principles and some flexibility for a developer. And that's something that we would provide as recommendation to alter your code.
Okay, and then in the spirit of getting formal documentation, so you mentioned amending our comprehensive plan, which is our intention. Do you see the plan as its own chapter or as an expansion of our current, chapter 8 and other chapters?
That is a good question. I pointed out things where I'd like to, if I could, fine tune your comprehensive plan, which I think allows, it actually ensures quality of life and what people actually want. but it also facilitates development because developers like predictability. They want to know what's left and to the right before they invest a lot of dollars. So we'd have two choices at that stage. If you look at our Inspirata plan or West Henderson plan for the last area of Henderson, they did that as a chapter and they structured it where it was just a separate chapter, went in there and sort of met all the other tiered goals that you already have and just expanded upon them as sort of a sub area. Alternatively, we could amend the land use map, and that's what we're doing for the city of Page, where they had the same problem. Everything was red. So they were expecting, I guess, a lot of commercial and so on. What they plan to do is to take our map and to make it a little bit more generalized, but to go ahead and amend their map. Also through things designing at this level, we detected a lot of issues as it relates to mobility and transportation that can be easily solved, especially with our work with Ada County. And so they're choosing to amend their comprehensive plan to reflect suggestions that we picked up, making sure it all works together.
Yeah, and I think it's worthwhile to note that our comprehensive plan is oversaturated with central business district, but that was really done just as a placeholder until we
Gotcha.
got to this.
That
Was the intent.
Perfect. And Megan was clear to tell me that she honored your land use codes and also your land use categories and tried to reflect them as best we could. So.
Mr. Mayor,
ma'am.
can you tell me a little bit about the public input process when you would bring them in and just how you get them engaged?
Right. Within 20 minutes, I could talk about 20 minutes of public involvement, and we are good at it and we love it. And that's what we've been doing all day. It's those three phases are these three touch points with the public and our stakeholders. In sub-area plans like this, stakeholder involvement is critical because it leads to implementation. Bringing the public along, especially if there's any financial obligations at any other time, you need to bring them along as well. In phase one, it's about listening to you and our landowners and our other stakeholders and really listening and then talking to them about what they want to achieve with their property and key spaces. And that's our stakeholder outreach. We will also, though, to make sure that we are transparent, offer that to anyone in STAR. So anyone who wants to talk to us one-on-one, they can, and it's always open. There is no limit. And then we'll also have some small group Charettes and so on. And then we'll also launch a digital component because there are people that are getting used to answering questions digitally. So that always go with that. In phase two, I think it's time for us to interact with a model like this, to visualize what intensity means. So as people say, wait a minute, I don't want that. I don't want that for traffic. It's more of a question of, do you like this or do not like this? Versus an argument about density, because we don't do that. We talk about character and what could be and a better quality of life. So we'll do an interactive charrette and also a digital charrette at that time. I think also film, in this case, because we're already doing it, the ability for people in our community to visualize this online and answer is important. The last part of our public involvement is clearly this sort of traveling exhibit or an exhibit room where people can see all the great things that you're doing, where they can come into a room, look at it, and answer questions. Planner on call, Ryan will be there for 1 hour on Fridays or 2 hours at lunch for people to come into this art room, you could say. But they'll also be able to do that on their phone and move around the drawing on their phone and say what they like and what they don't like for the drawing and the sub-area plan. Again, we track everybody in terms of where they live, and we do that very cautiously, making sure that we don't infringe on anyone's private property rights. But we want to know what age groups are participating. Generally, what sectors are they? Do they work here, live here? Are they outside? So that we can give you real data and tell you how well we're doing in public involvement. And if we're not doing well, we adjust. And we also compare that to the census information to make sure that it's a one-to-one. So we've heard from everyone. But it's important to hear from all incomes and all age groups. And that's an extremely important passion of mine.
Thank you.
I have another question. I have a question real quick here. So, what do you envision if your team was selected tonight, being able to start this process?
We're ready to start now. We've started. It's been 2 great weeks of working with junior planners to senior planners and designers, to transportation planners, even to come up with that concept plan. And I'll say that they are passionate and ready to go. And so it would be, please start. And we're already there in terms of I've studied the site, created the baseline data. Leland's already studied this whole trade area for market. So we are, would take us about a day, Mayor.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Keys?
So you also listed 8 optional items. Of that list, what are you think would be let's say the 3 most important ones that we might want to consider doing along with this? And at the same time, which are the 3 that might be the least valuable for us to consider at this time that maybe we do in the future, but maybe not right now?
Right, and I'm gonna have to go on memory since I don't have that right in front of me, but I have a pretty good memory. So if not, yeah, I'm happy to grab it.
Yeah, sure. To be fair, take a look at it.
So
Sure.
in terms of, we're practical planners, meaning we're public sector, but we get things built. And I know that's a passion of everyone on this council. So market analysis is important, but we understand the market. We've already looked into it. We've already compared it and had Leland verify some of our assumptions for how big a center could be, how many homes could be absorbed, growth rate of 5.7. But that's what we do, Megan and I. And so we're just backed up by Ted, making sure that we don't make any slips. And we also set you up for future funding districts or anything that you need. So on that one, I think that's important, but maybe a little less. The one that is clear is for the sake of any pushback on development. If we decide that, right now we were calculating that you were at 7,000 households possibly could fit in this area once you take out constraints, roads, other barriers, and so on. And we're looking at just in that plan that Megan drew up, probably more like 10,000. Not too much a difference, but we could see the public pushing back a little bit, saying, do I want these households? I think with that gridded street system and that higher connectivity, you would see less traffic. And that's extremely important because the site really funnels you back into that arterial system and back into being at a light for 20 minutes. And no one wants that future. We have a chance to stop that now. So I think that traffic analysis would be the #1 council member as in terms of what we'd like to see. Next, that site marketing materials, dealing directly with developers and talking about performance and what they want to see. If there is interest, then let's move on it. And let's try to push that as far as possible. And lastly, I mentioned, we'll give you code recommendations, but I think getting your framework in place with your code, I think that would be a great move because it would become more development ready. Anything to deal with flooding, we're doing a lot of work in floodplains, working with the natural floodplains and how to integrate development in a way that allows a river to ebb and flow, but still allow development. So the idea of resiliency is passionate. We don't hardscape anything. We're able to find designs that are creative. We don't believe that we need an engineer at this time, but if we do have issues, we always have people on call. So those would be other ones. So I think in terms of priority, hopefully that answered your question. All the rest are less on the priority list. But we wanted to make sure that we respected your what I anticipate is a reasonable budget that we supplied. We wanted to make sure that respected your budget and did not overbid this and allowed the community or yourselves to decide any other studies you want to do to take it after this.
Cool. 1 minute, is that what you're saying? Or are you saying?
No,
Wait a
Can I
minute.
just ask?
Yeah, one more question.
It's
Go
a
ahead.
clarification question. Because you used a term I hadn't heard in a long time and make sure I understand it still. You said Charettes. And if my memory serves, a charrette is an appointed group committee where equal percentages represent ideals that they want. And then this is an appointed committee that when a vote is taken with them, it's actually a binding vote, meaning it's something we move forward with. Are you meaning Charettes in that sense or Charettes in beyond just a discussion?
Right. We wanted to make sure that we represented both hands-on techniques. Though we are in a pandemic, there is room for people to meet in appropriate settings and engage in a dialogue like we are today, as well as digital media, which some people are very comfortable with right now. And we wanted to make sure we represented that. So in terms of charrette, we simply mean, and this is from a designer's point of view, of having Megan there where someone says, I'd love to see this, and she draws it up and sticks it on the wall and says, is that what you mean? Or I don't like density. Well, do you like something like this? And we draw it. To us interacting with a 3D model with a group, and it could be people polling going, I love that element, or I love that element, or I'd love to see that. And we're showing pictures and the 3D models and interacting with it together in order to build support for the project. So that's what I mean by charrette, is in-person contact, or at least eye-to-eye interaction.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you for your time. That was awesome. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Did you get your thumb drive already?
I did not,
Okay.
but you have all these files, and then you have hard copies as well. But I want to thank you for your time, and I just can't say how appreciative I am of having you and listening to me talk. So thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Bruce.
Thank you.
So be about 5 minutes there, council, while we get everything set up for the next group. So which one?
It's like a weird green color.
Looks like my Jeep. I closed
It's
it
an
out.
awesome green color.
Yeah.
It is the same color.
At least
It
I
is
know
the
it's
same
you
color.
when you drive it.
That's-
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
What's the next one? Kimberlee Horn.
So our next presenter will be presenting via Zoom. So this is Brandon with Kimberlee Horn. He is the Boise office lead.
I think they'll navigate it online. I will present a little bit at the beginning, but for the most part, they'll navigate it through. So do I.
Yes, this is correct.
Ask them to talk. If you're online, can you please unmute and talk just so we can make sure we have you on the volume?
This is Troy from Kimberlee Horn.
Perfect. Is that the only one that we have?
You also have Brad Lawnberger from Kimberlee Horn. And Stephen Chester with Kimberlee Horn as well.
If I would have looked at my sheet that Ryan gave me, I could have saw that there were. Oh. Mr. Chester,
Yes,
are you able to take over the screen there right now?
I will test that right now. And you will
Yeah,
also see
yeah,
my
we'll have
screen.
you up here. Perfect.
That's fine.
Yeah. Just cross our fingers that it continues to work.
So far, so good.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. We ready to go? Is the council ready? Ready, Ms. Jennifer? All right. Did you want to introduce them?
Sure, I can. You bet. I can introduce them. So this is Kimberlee Horn. In the room with us is Brandon. Brandon is the Boise, and if I misspeak, Brandon, let me know. Brandon's the Boise office lead. That's how you were introduced to me. And so he is in-house with us. He's going to present a little bit to us. And then on the line, we have Stephen Chester. He is the project manager for Kimberlee Horn, and he will be the primary presenter tonight. And they also have a couple other folks on the line with them as well. So Brandon?
Great, thank you. Good evening. And thank you very much for taking the time to allow us to review our response to the South of the River Sub-Area Plan RFP. My name is Brandon McDougald. I'm a civil engineer with over 20 years of experience in the land development industry. And I am the office leader for our Boise office. So attending here virtually is Stephen Chester, who we indicated is the project manager, and Brad Longberger and Troy Russ. I'll turn the time over to Stephen so that he can introduce himself as well as the balance of the project team.
And they all know the time limits, right?
We
Okay,
do.
all right. Thank you.
Rick, would you like us, I tried to turn on the video, it didn't work. Is it's just fine, just audio? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Yep.
Okay, sure. Okay, well, my name is Stephen Chester. I am, as Brandon said, the project manager on our team here. I've been with Kimberlee Horn for about 2 years. I'm a community planner. Prior to my time with Kimberlee Horn, I was a senior city planner with the City and County of Denver, where I worked for over 10 years on neighborhood plans and small area plans all throughout the Denver region. And really thrilled about this team that we've put together for this effort. True team of experts. We've all worked together on similar community-driven plans. And also have experience working in Idaho, the Treasure Valley, and here in Star as well.
And you've got Brad Longberger. I'll serve as a project principal and quality control and quality assurance. I have a 15-year history working across the nation in urban design, smart planning, looking at placemaking, and specifically how to implement vision after it's become policy.
And I am Troy Russ with Kimberlee Horn as well. I've been with Kimberlee Horn for 8 years. And I have 30 years of experience in integrating land use and urban design and transportation. I met many of you earlier this year when we sort of talked about a framework for this sub-area plan. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, Kimberlee Horn is a national full-service firm with over 90 offices across the United States and over 4,400 employees, of which consists of engineers, planners, landscape architects, amongst other professionals. One of the benefits that Kimberlee Horn brings is a national perspective with local experience. We've worked in Idaho for a number of years, and we've worked on over 100 projects in Idaho, of which 65 projects have been within the Treasure Valley. Those projects have been a wide variety of project types, but a sample would include aviation, both parking and transportation planning, land development type projects, and both public and private planning type projects. I'll turn the time over to Stephen so that he could talk through our planning approach.
Great, thanks, Brandon. So, after kind of careful consideration of the RFP, along with our understanding of STAR and the STAR community, we created 3 guiding principles for our planning approach. First being our commitment to a truly community-oriented planning process. Our team believes that great plans start with meaningful collaboration with a diversity of stakeholders from different backgrounds, which ultimately lead to community-driven plans and designs. Our approach will meaningfully engage with not only the city, property owners, the community at large, but also the area's vested partners such as ITD and ACHD. Secondly, our planning approach is both place and performance-based. Place-based meaning that we're committed to celebrating and enhancing the unique attributes of STAR and the Boise River in the sub-area. while ensuring that the vision is also performance-based. So that means including measurable goals along with data-driven decision-making to help drive the plan's implementation. So similarly, we believe that the planning process and the plan needs to be market-driven. This ensures that the community's vision will align with market realities, setting up a framework for implementation that is action-oriented and also fiscally responsible, doing what we can to make sure that this plan does not just simply sit on the shelf.
So this is Troy, and I want to talk about the role of the small area plan or the sub-area plan in relationship to the comprehensive plan. When you think of community planning, comprehensive plans sit about 30,000 feet looking down on the community, sort of setting aspirational goals. And one of the most important goals that we found in the comprehensive plan related to the sub-area plan is to strive and retain its small town family-friendly character while growing a strong commercial base in a vibrant downtown. I think that is direct applicability to the sub-area plan. In looking at the comprehensive plan, it really highlights the need to do a detailed sub-area plan because the wide variety of opportunities going forward. Today's population is around 10,000 people. The 20-year forecast is all over the place. Compass has projected the community in 20 years to grow to 24,000. The comprehensive plan identified growth to 45,000, yet the growth rate in STAR, and if you projected out that growth rate out to almost 100,000 people in 20 years. So there is a wide variety of growth coming to the community. Importantly to the sub-area plan is also understanding how much the downtown or the central business district can accommodate that growth. Today you have 85 acres that is sort of serving the community at a low density suburban character. In your forecast, you're showing a land use plan that is up to 560 acres. Now 560 acres is an enormous downtown. That's bigger than Boise. It's bigger than many downtowns. So I think the sub-area plan in your scope is meant to refine this and really understand how the CBD and the sub-area plan really relates to the larger community growth goals. Next slide. But as we look at the sub-area plan, we still want to remember the comprehensive plan and its key objectives of what is a small town and how do we manage the small town and retain its character as this growth enters STAR. It's an important element that your community really, the council and the community really find important enough to call out in the comprehensive plan. Next slide. So I'm sorry, back up, Stephen. The small area plan and what is a small town, right? It's not just reserved for small towns. I've worked in a community of Parker of 40,000 people that call themselves a small town. Was the planning director of Louisville, Colorado, that was 25,000 people. Both communities are very similar to STAR in their population size. A small town is a state of mind, it's a state of place, and it's a state of practice. It can be measured and quantified. It can be felt, experienced, and implemented. So we're not intimidated by the growth. We believe the growth is economically important to the community, and it is a partner to creating and ensuring a small town. Next slide. So our understanding of this project is how do you translate these aspirational goals of the comprehensive plan and understand that specifically for the sub-area plan of the central business districts and its surroundings. We understand there's a strong goal of creating a sense of place, building on the Boise River, recognizing the bench and the Great Valley in between. We need to make sure it's market supportive and practical and implementable. It needs to be environmentally resilient, and really importantly, it needs to be safe and efficient from a mobility perspective. I want to pause here because our scope is different than our competition in that transportation is an important point of this. And the town of STAR doesn't really have control of its transportation system as much as it has partners with Ada County and ITD. And it's an important component because ensuring a small town character really means you have to get an understanding and getting ahead of the roadways design. Next slide. So what is a small area plan and a sub-area plan? It is, think of it as a microscope and a biologist looking at cells. It's focusing in on the aspirational goals of the comprehensive plan and starting understanding how those goals actually fit on parcels. It's designing your community. So it should outline the actual physical capacity of the sub-area. But we need to balance that with the character capacity. And what do I mean by character capacity? Well, is the central business district of Star a 2-story town? Is it a 3-story town? Is it a 4-story town? And working with the community to really understand it. How do you want water integrated into its design? It becomes a physical design exercise to make sure the goals and aspirations of the community can actually fit within the parcels that are intended to serve it. Next slide. So I'm going to give you an example from Parker, Colorado. It's a 2nd-generation community. It's a suburb of Denver. Growth, the 1st-generation growth that is coming to Star has already come to Parker, and Parker's now experiencing 2nd-generation growth. But they didn't really have a downtown form. And so this is an aerial perspective looking west over downtown Parker. And we worked with them in a large area in a community very similar to the growth that Star is supposed to grow into. Next slide. And we helped set policies and worked with the Colorado Department of Transportation to transform the community into the community the residents of Parker wanted to achieve. Now, this downtown was about 80 acres in total size, similar to what you have here, but more dense in its relationship. We need to work with the community, Ada County, working with your stakeholders to understand how that community fits within the future of Star. And I just wanted to show you an example from Parker that has been seen as widely successful in the Denver region. Brad.
And so taking this this vision and carrying it forward into implementation is the key to a success for a small area plan. In Owensboro, Kentucky, it was focused mostly on the downtown as the small area, but was tied to a regulation and zoning and subdivision structure that allowed the vision to actually progress and move forward. And by tying those two together, we are ensuring an opportunity to allow one, the visioning process, which was very public, the newspaper reporting is as a bold move, but allowing the regulations to match that vision at the same time that both plan and zoning is adopted. To allow the developers to follow in tune with this excitement for downtown. And you can see in 2008, right around in the next slide, we have an aerial. 2008, it had a lot of parking lots. It was sort of a scattered kind of downtown area. And Stephen, you can show the next. But a series of investments were made in the dark blue and the light blue areas of public infrastructure. So a new convention center, a new riverfront boardwalk, and the rules to require on-street parking or allow them to be included and to have those buildings be brought to the street. So creating that walkable format. So 10 years later, you see this new aerial where a lot of those areas, the convention center has been redeveloped, new developments, a new hotel, new restaurant clusters, an enhanced and vibrant community space have all been brought in because we were able to tie the regulations directly to that vision and concept. And so through that partnership, it incited a lot of public entities to partner up, put in $150 million worth of infrastructure, which was this boardwalk and the convention center and a number of other streetscape improvements. And the private development responded in kind with $300 million worth of investment in new structures that were all taxable. And so by tying these stories together, we were able to get success from public and private partnerships moving forward.
So we've talked kind of about the why behind why do a sub-area plan. I want to talk a little bit more about kind of how we propose doing that. And we think how that happens kind of begins and ends with the community through what we like to call a community engaged planning process. You know, to create a visionary yet implementation driven plan, our team is committed to working hand in hand with the community as co-collaborators. We view our team as facilitators and subject matter experts, but the vision and ultimate implementation of the sub-area plan really will rely on the STAR community. So the issue with kind of planning in general and planning processes is they can be overly complicated, full of jargon, and the community input process can be perceived as kind of a black box where the community and the stakeholders often end up frustrated when they kind of miss the connection between their input and the final product. And so to address this problem, we've taken the scope as outlined in the RFP and broken up into a tailored set of 4 distinct phases. And each phase, like a great story, has a clear beginning and an end with a tailored set of community engagement strategies, along with very clear and defined deliverables. These deliverables will allow the community to kind of see the direct outcome of their work and ensure that there's no surprises at the end of the planning process. So the first phase is designed so the planning team can understand both the qualitative and the quantitative existing conditions of the sub-area, along with appreciate the sometimes competing goals of the plan stakeholders. And so this will include, like I said, a tailored kind of set of community engagement strategies to introduce the planning process to the larger community, to clearly define the expectations of the community, of staff, of the planning team, of council. This phase will also culminate in what we like to call a state of the sub-area report. And that will detail a review of the adopted plans for the area, a data-driven traffic analysis, along with kind of future demand modeling of the transportation network, a land use and zoning review, a detailed floodplain review, and an actionable summary of the sub-area's strengths and constraints. So moving from that phase to the next, we'll work with the community and invite them to envision the future of the sub-area through a set of engaging workshops where we'll develop an array of potential future land use and transportation scenarios that will implement the kind of collective vision that we've come up with as a planning team and as a community. And so each of these scenarios will have their associated transportation and infrastructure costs, so the community can make an informed decision about what they view as the preferred alternative for the sub-area. So with that preferred alternative in mind, we'll work with the community and staff and council to develop a visionary yet implementable plan for roadways, open spaces, land uses, and urban design for the sub-area. We'll ensure that this final plan is highly graphical and easy to understand by the entire STAR community. This will also include a detailed infrastructure plan and associated costs in order, what will take to actually implement this plan from an infrastructure perspective, along with a truly action-oriented implementation plan that will really focus on what are those near-term actions that the city can start to take on to begin to bring that vision into reality in the near term. And lastly, in the realizing phase, we'll work with city council and city staff to create a regulatory framework that will ensure the plan's successful implementation. So that includes an assessment of the current zoning code and identifying the necessary changes or potential new zone districts that may be needed in order to fully realize the vision of the sub-area plan, and the necessary time to collaborate with staff and council to draft those amendments. So I want to talk a little bit about the budget. Seen on the screen here is the detail is the scope as detailed in the scope of services from the RFP. In our team's collective experience developing community-driven plans with an implementation focus, we feel as though it's absolutely critical to add in some of the elements that discussed previous, such as the data-driven analysis of the sub-area, along with the development of these potential different scenarios for the community. The community needs to work hand in hand with the city staff and with our team to develop the alternatives and also have the metrics available to them to make informed decisions. We really see that as a necessary investment for success. And so, by adding in those tasks along with what we feel as kind of necessary additional community engagement to help overcome some of the challenges that we see today in the COVID-19 era, such as potentially adding in digital online engagement platforms so everyone in the STAR community can feel comfortable engaging in the process, we feel as though are kind of the necessary elements needed in order to successfully create and implement the sub-area plan. So I want to summarize our team's proposal and our approach, kind of bringing back our 3 guiding principles and really highlighting what we think are the true keys to success for the plan and the planning process. The plan's successful implementation really relies on it being market-driven. So this includes data-driven decision-making along with action-oriented and market-supported vision in order to really create a plan that's both visionary but also actionable by the entire community. Our team has a deep passion for both place and performance-based planning. So that means not only relying on pretty pictures, but also the data behind those pictures in order to tell the complete story about a community's vision. And so we bring a deep passion for this type of transformational planning, along with the local experience, but also the national experience that we can bring to the STAR community to create this actionable sub-area plan. And lastly, the plan needs to be community oriented, and that really begins with authentic engagement. Our team simply doesn't look at community engagement as just checking the box, but really looks at the community as partners in developing the sub-area plan. And that begins with meaningful collaboration with all potential partners in the planning process, property owners, the community at large, but also the city's transportation partners, as Troy outlined earlier. So this is a project that our entire team is incredibly excited about. We're just thrilled to have the opportunity to describe our planning process in a little more detail, just to have this interview and to talk with you about our plan and our planning process. And really look forward to the conversation and look forward to answering any questions you may have about our presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Did you have anything further to say real quick before we, okay. So we're gonna move on to some questions here real quick. And I have a couple if you guys are all right with me asking that first. Okay. As far as timing goes, when would your team be available to start the project? And what is, I saw on the project schedule, you anticipate about a 7.5 month total completion with this, with 6.5 months and another month of a code adoption. Is that pretty firm on that time frame, or is there any way to escalate that a little bit, or?
So in terms of your first question, I mean, we're ready to start working on this as soon as you are all ready. Our team is chomping at the bit to start working with you all and to working with the community to help develop this vision. In terms of the planning process, I mean, everything is, I'd love to sit down and work with city staff and council and looking at potential synergies that may exist, or potential collaborating with staff on some tasks that maybe, have already been completed, or additional work that, we can collaborate on to help kind of streamline the process. I think that the time as we presented in the proposal is pretty aggressive, I think. But,
is that aggressive? Okay.
Just in our experience, but like I said, we're willing to work with you and, do what's right for the STAR community.
Okay. And then one last question is, the total fee that you had on there, is that a not to exceed price, or you anticipate change orders or anything like that that may arise? I mean, what are we looking at as far as that aspect goes?
No, so we just wanted to provide you a budget proposal that included every task and analysis and that would be needed to create a successful plan for the sub area. So there's no optional tasks associated with our proposal. And yeah, it is a not to exceed. We will be able to perform the work for the amount that we agree to if you select us.
Okay. That's all I had.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Keys.
So maybe I misunderstood, but the budgetary numbers that you put up on your slide a few slides ago seem like they're quite a bit different than what we have on our written proposal. Am I missing something, or?
So
it looked like there's about a 30% difference.
Yeah, so what, sorry for the confusion, what showed on the screen was, we took a step back and took a look at the scope of services as provided in the RFP and just did a one-for-one comparison. And so that was that first number you saw, but the number that is in our proposal is some additional tasks like additional community engagement, additional analysis that we feel is absolutely critical to the successful creation of the vision and implementation of the plan. So
so the number we should be relying on is the written number in the package that you presented to us, not the one that was on the presentation, correct?
Yeah, so in the presentation was just kind of a one-for-one comparison with the scope, and then so the additional tasks as we outlined. And so that's the number that is in your proposal. But I mean, we're really excited about the opportunity to work on this project. And if you were to, really to select us, we're willing to work with you and come up with something that works for everyone.
Okay, and then I think you understand that we're looking at an amendment to our comprehensive plan with this. Would you look at taking the plan that you generate as a new chapter in our comprehensive plan, or would you look at weaving that into the plan as it currently exists? Primarily in the land use section, but other sections as well. How do you anticipate integrating that?
That's a really good question. I think there's multiple ways to do it. I'd say, Troy, do you, or Brad, I saw you kind of raise your hand. Do you have some thoughts there?
I think we both may. I'll let Brad go first. And then I'll follow.
Absolutely. We're doing the same thing for another community, Aledo, Texas. And I've also done it for San Angelo, Texas, where focus is on a specific area of highlight. So say a downtown, or in your case, this sub area. It's a lot easier for a process to attach an addendum to the existing plan so that we aren't going in and reworking the entire plan itself. From a graphical and formatting standpoint, because then we start leading into needing to update new numbers and everything else from the original plan to highlight all of those specific chapters within an attachment that becomes attachment 1 or exhibit 1 of a special area plan. Would be a much cleaner process for staff and for the consultant team and the community.
I'll just reiterate, that's not unique to Texas. That is pretty much a nationwide phenomenon. As sub-area plans emerge, they become reference documents to the comprehensive plan and supersede the comprehensive plan in the areas of study.
And then you also mentioned the presentation, potentially doing updates to our codes. Are you talking about proposing some changes to our ordinances in addition to this comprehensive plan amendment?
Correct. Yeah, that was, I believe, also outlined in the RFP. But if through the planning process, there's the vision, you don't have the right kind of regulatory framework in place to implement that vision, then that's that kind of last phase of the planning process, is taking a deeper dive into the regulatory or the zoning code or other statutes in order to assess what are the challenges, and then work with you all to address those challenges. And I don't know, Brad, if you had any other additions to that.
We would include an assessment of your zoning and subdivision to make sure that it's tracking with the vision and the goals and outcomes that that we're hearing from the community. And then from there, we would be able to recommend whether it's more just quick fixes that could satisfy a lot of the need, or whether maybe a new district is required. But for the purposes of this scope of work, we're assuming that we can handle many of the fixes with small fixes and making sure that we get the right graphical and text-based standards done for you.
If I may add to that, I think the importance of that can't be understated. Private development responds to public investment. And so the infrastructure plan will set up the public investment, and we need to make sure what the private sector invests is compatible and in alignment with the plan and the public investment. So the subdivision regulations in particular are critical to the success of sub-area plans being realized.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? None? Do you want to say anything in closing?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be in front of you this evening. And I'm sure, Stephen, you probably have some thoughts that you would like to share as well as being a project manager.
You're the main guy, Stephen. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. I mean, yeah, I feel I can't see Brandon. He's off the screen, so I kind of forgot he was standing there. But yeah, I mean, I look forward to potentially working with you all. I've really enjoyed getting to know the community. I mean, Idaho. Well, I'm based in Denver, Idaho, and Kimberlee Horn knows this pretty well. Idaho is where I eventually want to end up with my career. So, if this will get me one step closer to my personal dream, that'd be great. But also, just this project is such a thrill for the community. It's such an exciting time for the STAR community, and to be a part of that is just something that Kimberlee Horn's really deeply interested in being a part of.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, you too.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Five minutes again. Sorry. Hey, Ryan, can we get a copy of that presentation?
Yes.
Oh, I have it right here.
Yes.
I have it. I have it right here.
I have it there.
Yeah.
So we're good. Yep. Okay, anything else before we? Okay. Thank you. How are you? John, can you go ahead and speak and see if we can hear you, please?
Hello, this is John. I don't think I'm muted. Can people hear
It's
me?
perfect. We can hear you. Thank you, sir.
Oh,
And your
great.
team is
Good
here
deal.
as well.
Well, I knew they would be. I was less sure about myself.
And then you, will you be driving the presentation from your end or?
Actually, I think Jay would be better to, I think more of a fail-safe
Okay.
effort. So he'll do all the management. I'll just provide the color commentary.
Yeah. Yeah, so that way I'm back here, so that way you can have access to your computer and everything. So I just am pulling it up as a PDF. So it won't, it's not so much a flip, but. I'm going to try this. Can I drive? Drive. Okay, bam. Drive.
Bring our own IT everywhere we go.
Hey, John, are you there, sir?
Yes, sir. I'm
Okay,
here.
So we just want to make sure we can hear you and everything on there. So that's,
Am I hearable?
you are hearable.
No, great.
Everybody's good?
So Jay, I'm only seeing part, the bottom of the slide is cut off. Is that, maybe that's not a problem, but if you could kind of extend the.
Well, it's,
Yeah, it's not full.
but we have this, correct?
There we
It's the
go.
same
That's
thing as
good.
this.
Okay.
So we're okay. Yeah.
Yeah, good deal.
All right, so
By the way,
we'll,
before we start,
hang on one second, John. Are you
yeah.
ready, Ryan? All right, all right. All right, John, go ahead, or are you guys starting? Who's starting this show? John
I
is?
guess I am.
All right, John, you go ahead, sir.
Thank you. So thank you for letting us make a pitch this evening. Boy, we're happy to take a shot at this and really excited about the project. I guess the first thing to do is to introduce ourselves. My name is John Owen. I'm a partner at Makers Architecture and Urban Design, and I would like to be the project manager on this project. I've accomplished a number of them of similar scope and type, but not exactly like the effort that you have here, and really excited about it. So maybe Jay, do you want to take over?
Certainly. I'm Jay Gibbons with South Beck and Barrett here in Boise. Beck and Barrett's been involved in all types of development projects and recreational design in the Treasure Valley for over 30 years. Our role will be to provide the local face-to-face interaction with the city staff, city leaders, stakeholders, and the community. And we'll be conducting the community input gathering and support makers in all planning efforts going forward.
Good evening. As most of you know, I'm Ryan Morgan. I'm with Keller Associates. We will be working with the others. We will be vital in the infrastructure and the knowledge that comes with STAR. And I just want to say that the team that we've assembled, nobody has more experience working in and around STAR than our team does. And we're here to work for you to implement your plans.
Okay, well, and I will follow up on what Ryan said. We are a team, so it's going to be a integrated effort, and we can promise you an efficient, effective, very responsive service to your staff and to the council and other stakeholders in the community. So just a little bit about our approach. In our experience, what we found is you really are trying to help drive development, and you want to make sure that things happen. You want to move the city forward in its direction towards its vision. And to do that, a city is only, one hand clapping. You need to work with other people. You need with the community behind you. You need the other partners, and you need the development community and property owners there as well. So you need some keys to success. And here's the things we found are very important. You need a realistic approach. It's based on market and development trends over time. And you need a framework to make that work. And I'll talk a little bit about that. You need supporting infrastructure, and Ryan's here to hit on that one. Also, it's very important to use your assets and build on them. And Jay will talk a little bit about that as well as we'll both talk about community quality and livability, because if you don't have a good quality and livable community, all your work is really pointless. And finally, I'll just follow up with a few things about timing, which is going to be really critical in any project like this, and the partnerships that you need to build to make things happen. So it's a very pragmatic approach, and we'd like to kind of go through it now. So next, please. So like I say, you need something, a realistic thing. And one of the things that struck us about the sub area is that it's large, it's big. There's a lot of things, a lot of opportunities to go on. And one of the things I think that the community is going to have to sort out fairly early on is what they want where. And we'll help with that process. And here's a similar approach here. This is over on the east side of Boise, the Iceman, Columbia area. And the city kind of knew what it wanted, but it needed somebody to help put the pieces together and figure out where the town center might be, what kinds of different industrial uses and where they might fit and how they might align themselves best with the transportation network that they've going here. And so that's what this is about, is to try to set up a framework of where you focus your energy and what kind of uses go there and what kind of infrastructure goes around there. So you see that kind of funny dotted green line, that's the boulevard that helps give this area, ties it together and gives it its credibility, character. Excuse me. Next, please. And this is the same kind of a deal on a smaller scale. So you're probably going to want to focus, in certain areas. My guess is just south of the river and maybe creating a node. And this is the kind of thing you want to do there, is to look at what kinds of uses go where. And this is from Olympia. And you can kind of see the different colored blobs there. One talks about where the recreation might be, another where the commercial stuff, and the purple was kind of some what they call art, tech, industrial, light industrial work. And so setting that up and setting the infrastructure in place and making sure that everybody had a common sense of how the strategy will play out really led to some success. On the right, you see all the recent development in the last couple of years, and it's really been phenomenal. So we feel pretty good about the success of that. The other thing that's going to be necessary is going to be the infrastructure. You got to get that in place first, and Ryan will talk a little bit about that.
Again, nobody knows the infrastructure like Keller Associates knows the infrastructure. We've worked with Star Sewer and Water District for over 20 years, preparing multiple different versions of their master plans for both sewer and water, including their most recent sewer master plan that was adopted just earlier this year. And this master plan is actually key and critical to the Star sub-area plan. As we can see on the next slide, that master plan focused some on this Star sub-area plan. We looked at what needs were going to be if Star was to develop south of the river. Part of that included a sewer and water trunk line that will be running down Star Road with a sewer lift station just off or just east of or west of Star Road on Joplin Road, which, by the way, that project bid today. Contracts will be awarded next week, and you will see construction of that starting here shortly. We at Keller have been involved with all those phases of the infrastructure. As well, we were very involved with the new FEMA floodplain maps that were adopted in June 2020. We worked with the city, we worked with FEMA to implement and help FEMA understand what the city wanted. There were several different options that could have happened with the floodplain here in Star. And we worked with the council and with the previous mayor to help implement and help FEMA understand which route that Star wanted to go to get the new floodplain maps adopted that actually became very beneficial for Star. Star was the only area along the Boise River that lost floodway instead of gained floodway. And our team was part of that process.
So moving on to building on assets, I think it's critical to note that, of course, the infrastructure that the city has already endeavored to, to accomplish ahead of this planning effort is an asset by itself. Also, the Boise River is the east-west spine of the city. It currently separates the city. However, it can and should be the tie that binds the city together in the long run. STAR has an opportunity to either incorporate the river into a variety of, or a mix of public spaces defining the city, or let it become private for the use of a select few. Consideration should be given to create a mix of uses directly adjacent to the river, creation of entertainment and dining venues, shopping, offices, and commercial space, as well as residential homes on the riverfront itself. At the very least, create a set aside, a buffer from development for the extension of the valley's greenbelt. The greenbelt runs 25 miles through Boise and out to parts of Eagle now, and STAR is just downriver. And I know that there is a group that is pursuing continuation of the greenbelt all the way to the confluence of the Boise with the Snake River. And I know it takes time, but it takes part of the city's planning process to gain that synergy. And this greenbelt would become an off-road commuter route and recreational amenity, tying STAR to the other greenbelt segments throughout the valley. The second asset is basically the planning area south of the river is a blank slate. There's a large lot subdivision on the east end of the suburban planning area, but the rest of it is largely agricultural, large parcels with a scattering of single family residences, and those property owners and those residents are key to this planning process as well. With the city services and the infrastructure construction about to get underway, now's the time to create and implement STAR's vision for the future of STAR's identity and its future. Next slide, please.
So we've had a little bit of experience. All three firms have worked on the riverfront in Boise and the Riverwalk and associated other developments there. Makers back in the late 70s, early 80s, in fact, it was one of the first projects I worked on in the firm, worked on the 8th Street improvements, trying to connect downtown, the old downtown, to the riverfront. And you kind of see in the upper left there, early on, and taking early 80s, what that walk that we put in did. Now, of course, the city has done much, much more about that. They've really improved the whole thing. And you see on the lower left, what it currently looks like in that same area that we had worked on. But the real important thing is it's not just the Riverwalk, it's the development that kind of came up and down 8th and 9th Streets that really helped turn that part of the area around and made it a real asset for the city. Next, please. So makers sowed the seed and helped the city out early on, but both Keller and SBB really, putting some finishing touches on it. You can see some projects here by Keller, the extension out to the west side, very big deal. Really, the long connection that really helps make this whole thing work. And Southbeck and Baird did some landscaping and amenities as well on this part. Next, please. So another project real quickly, it's another joint HBB, SBB makers project over on the west side in Seattle. It's the Alki Harbor Duwamish Corridor. Again, it was a large, massive project to make use of this waterfront that was a real resource. So a lot of the projects involved within the landscaping was done by HBB that you can kind of see here. The boulevard and making that street, much more amenable for development. The bicycle way that connects all the way back to the mountains to Sound. You can go from this trail here to Ellensburg. And then the parks and working with the tribes and the natural areas and other amenities along here, kind of a string of pearls type of thing, really, really enlivened West Seattle and made it much more active. Next, please. One other thing that we think is very important, the fourth element, is community quality and character and livability. I'll just show one project here. It's Mill Creek Town Center, and this might be something that you're thinking about south of the river. Is a whole new small pedestrian-oriented retail, commercial, mixed-use kind of a center. And this is a pretty good example of how that can be done, starting from scratch, just an empty couple of lots. And there is some glitz to it, but mostly the community wanted a very small scale, intimate project that would serve the locale. And it turned out quite nice. What you don't see in this project is a lot of rooftops around there. So it was not just a town center plopping that out in the middle of nowhere. It was this whole framework of developing residential as well as the commercial uses. Next, please. And one more example at Chelan downtown. Again, here the issue was connecting an older part of downtown and making sure it had good design guidelines to keep the quality and character of the area that they wanted, but also connecting the downtown to the riverfront art walk that they are developing. And it's hard to see, but in the background, you see the part that we helped out with was to make that connection between the main street and the main Campbell's recreation and resort area down to the river walk and really expanding the assets that the community has. Next, please. So over to you, Jay.
Thank you, John. South Beck and Baird has been involved with a lot of projects along the Greenbelt, along the river, and specifically a lot of projects within Star, many of them for the city and for its residents. So as far as community quality and livability go, the overriding question to creating a quality community and its livability is what will define Star? What brings people to Star? What keeps people in Star? Many of these answers will come out of the community input gathering process. We'll learn how the community at large views their own city. And through this, we'll assist you as leaders in the community to create a unique public spaces that invite the community to come together, create entertainment, dining, shopping opportunities to keep residents in town, not spending their hard-earned dollars in neighboring communities, create a cohesive style unique to Star itself. And this can be accomplished incorporating design elements into all future and building and public spaces, building styles and facades, similar building materials, consistent site furnishings, installations for art, varied paving patterns and types delineating spaces, and creating pedestrian multimodal transportation linkages from the residential development, could be on the fringe and in the center throughout this sub-area and throughout the city to the river itself. As John said, it's critical that in the end, the city create design guidelines for future development and follow it up with codifying them in code so that they can be feasibly implemented and create that vision. Next slide.
Okay, a couple of just pragmatic things right now. One thing is that Rome wasn't built in a day, so you're going to have to phase work, and you need to start with the things that make the most sense as kind of an armature that development can go on. And so here's an example from Wenatchee Riverfront Plan, a very successful project, and we can see our projections of when things would happen and how they would develop. And the lower right shows what actually did happen very early on. So once we were able to convince the mayor that we needed a roadway connection and access into this area to open it up and provide it like the armature that Ryan talked about for development, things came along real quick. And I remember walking through this old mill building with the property owner and talking about what he was thinking, and had no idea that he would turn this thing into the Pybus Public Market, which is really for Central Washington, it's the biggest attraction, man-made, human-made attraction in Central Washington. So it really can be a big deal. Last time I was in Wenatchee, the economic developer came up to me and gave me a big hug, and I said, geez, what's that for? And she said, well, you know, we've just passed a $1.5 billion mark in terms of investment, and we got $2.5 billion in in the pipeline. So we both felt pretty good about that. One final slide, please. I think we got one more. Yeah. Okay. Partnerships. Yes. The other thing that is important is, like I say, you can't do it alone. You need your community behind you. You need property owners willing to go out there and make things happen. You need a development community to come in and provide the investment that's going to be necessary. And here's kind of a little bit about the process from the Mill Creek project that I showed you earlier. You can see the three property owners there, and the public, the planning director is on the left and pointing out, you know, if you do this and you do that, and they kind of got together and made this all happen. But it wouldn't have happened if Bill and our team weren't in there figuring out how we could build those partnerships to make it happen. And you know, you can see in the little picture there, the aerial, it really turned out really well. And a lot of the development turned out just like the drawings. And now it's one of the premier spots in the Puget Sound area for a small community that has developed a real attraction. So that brings us mostly to the end, but maybe Jay and Ryan might have a few things that they wanted to add right before we get to questions and answers, which we hope we have some time for.
Absolutely. As John said, you need partners. It's great for the city to come up with a plan, but unless you get some of the other stakeholders in the area involved, it doesn't matter what you put on paper, it'll never come to pass. We already have the relationships with ITD, with ACHD, with the Star Shore and Water District, with many of the developers in the area. We can bring them in to the table and help them get the vision of what Star wants to have happen, so that in the future, this really can come to fruition.
And from our standpoint, South Beck and Baird, we've been a community partner throughout our 30-year history. We've worked with the city on many projects in Star itself, recreational type projects that, you know, they enhance the community. We've worked with federal, state, and local agencies to accomplish dozens of high-profile parcels. And we also have staff who've been city and county employees that bring that knowledge of the interaction, the inner workings of the city with the development community, and that's, you know, that really helps our role to this project. In the end, our makers team brings a full palette of expertise to the table, and we're at your disposal and look forward to hopefully being a part of this planning effort with you. And with that,
So I
last
hope we
slide
didn't
is
go too
thank you.
long. We would like, sorry, Jay, I hope we didn't go too long. We certainly welcome any questions and we'll try to answer them.
Okay, questions of council?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Keys.
So we've talked about this plan as an augmentation to our existing comprehensive plan. And how do you, what's your vision for how we implement that? Do you see this as a separate chapter, an amendment to the current land use chapter? Do you see amending the comprehensive plan by weaving this throughout the plan, or how do you see implementing that?
Well, that's a really good question. And there are a number of ways to skin that cat. Sometimes you can just reference it as a piece. And a lot of communities do that. They just say, well, you know, part of our comprehensive plan includes a sub-area plan, and the law, you know, sees that as being fine. Another way is to actually go in and take apart your comp plan or take apart the parts. So you might say the transportation bit that comes out of this sub-area plan would go into your transportation element, or your land use element might change. Certainly one thing we haven't talked too much about is your regulatory mechanisms will probably want to change. If you want to direct development in a way that fits your vision, you're probably going to want to be a little more specific about how the zoning works. And I'm guessing you'll want some design guidelines to make sure that the quality of the area is maintained, and you keep the small town characteristics that you're looking for. So I think that's a question that I took a stab at early, but it's one that's going to come up throughout the process, and we'll direct the plan to make sure that it's easy for your staff to put it into the comp plan, whether it's by referral or by piece by piece.
Okay, and then as a follow-up, you mentioned the regulatory structure. So would you propose specific changes to our development code that you would want us to integrate to help empower the plan? Did I understand that correctly?
I'm guessing that that's going to be right. Yes, you're probably going to want to be more specific, particularly in certain areas. I mean, let's assume that along Star Road, just south of the river, that you want to have a mixed-use node, for example, a kind of a small commercial and mixed-use center. Let's assume that may not be your vision, but if it is, then you're probably going to want to set up zoning and design guidelines to make sure that the development that does go in there is supportive of that vision. I mean, that's the major tool that you have other than incentives. And sometimes you want up zones. You actually want to make it a little more free, so you get a greater mix of things and you entice development. But that comes after really honing in and finding out what the public is looking for and coming back to you and deciding, well, this is the direction we want to go. But once that direction's set, then you want to use both your infrastructure and your regulatory and programmatic tools all to get the same direction. Did I beat that one to death? I may have overspoke myself.
Well, I think I got the gist. And you know, when we look at this as a partnership between Star City government and the development community and the landowners, in order for the city to hold up its end and its obligations and potentially provide some investment, do you have experience in helping to define and set up urban renewal districts? Is that something that you would help us do, or to find other mechanisms to help us meet our obligations to be a good partner when it's time to sit at the table?
Well, certainly we'll work towards that way. We've worked with communities to find incentives for development, but a big one is going to be infrastructure, and maybe Ryan has some thoughts on that.
There's always all types of grants that you can get from multiple different jurisdictions. There's LTAC, which is the Highway Association. There's DEQ that has helped and facilitated with funds for Star Shore and Water District. FEMA has funds that you can actually apply for, and with the city, the river running right through the heart of the city, there are grants and there are funds that we can reach out to FEMA for to increase and build productivity. And then, as you talk about, can we implement ways to increase or bring in additional funds? Absolutely. All three firms on the team have experience and know-how on how to do that.
Okay,
Thank you.
can I ask a question? Yeah. Okay, all right. Just want to make sure. Just real quick on, well, not real quick, there's a couple questions here. On your proposed compensation on those optional services for the floodway and floodplain and traffic corridor study, those high-end ranges, you won't exceed that, correct? I mean, you have a range of 19 and 22.5. So everywhere else you have cost not to exceed. I just want to make sure that the cost not to exceed the high end of that would be incurred.
The ultimate goal is to work with the city to define a scope that we could pin that down and not exceed that dollar amount.
Okay.
That's right.
Then
we commonly work on a time and materials basis to an upset maximum.
okay. And then on exclusions, I just, a curiosity, all standard reimbursable fees such as printing will be billed at cost of the city of Star. What do you anticipate that to be?
Not much.
Okay.
You know, if there's a number of posters that need to be done for an open house, for example, that might be there. But usually it's a minor amount.
Okay.
We typically don't charge for travel. That's in our overhead. We do charge half of our time for travel. So if I'm going out there and taking a day to travel out there, half of that would be billable, but not all of it.
And two more on this. I do construction and contract stuff, so I'm very, I nitpick this stuff. So fees required by Compass are unforeseen at this time if costs incurred fees to be paid by the city of Star. In your experience of doing this, have you incurred fees from them? Because I know the city gets a certain number of allocated hours of assistance for this.
So in the latest master plan that was done by the city, that was adopted, was it May of 18?
Yeah.
We worked with Compass. Compass did some analysis and Compass did some modeling for us. There were no additional fees as part of that. So I would say that we don't anticipate it.
Okay.
Especially for an area as small as we're talking about.
Okay. Small? It's huge. You know that, Ryan.
When you're talking about the
I
entire
get
Treasure
it.
Valley.
I get it. No, I'm kidding. And then our scope of work does not include tasks that lack a definable work product. Do you feel like there's scopes in here that lack that? I mean, is it, I know you're just, I know there's a lot of this is standard verbiage that we put in these deals, but I just want to make sure if we do select you, that I'm not going to get blindsided by a cost that we didn't anticipate, right?
Right. Mr. Mayor, I think that the reason that we put it in there is there are times where we're not all on the same page as far as what your expectations are at this point. And we want to make sure that if we're eons apart and you start adding to, oh, well, it'd be nice if we had this study or publish this information, what have you, that we need to.
It's the left field stuff that you're trying to, okay, gotcha. All right.
I don't envision any problem like that. It hasn't come up in contracts that we've been working on.
Okay. And then timing, if we were to select you, what's your timing as being able to get this thing started? And I believe in your, I know we're about a month behind on this, granted. But I believe you said, I think you were being able to follow the timeline on here, correct?
Yeah,
initially. I know it's going to change a little bit, but initially.
Well, it's like my old drill sergeant says, you know, when I say jump, you ask how high on the way up. I can promise you will be a responsive service. I kind of think the early timing is going to be dictated quite a bit by the holidays. You don't want to do a lot of public participation. You want to get everything ready so at the first of the year you can start. But and I'll follow your lead on that. I'll follow the city's lead on how important they think the holidays will be in terms of slowing down the process. I mean, this is an unusual year, God knows, but you know, we're ready.
So you could gear up and get going right away. If here's the thing, we can't make a decision tonight because we didn't make it an action item. So we're going to have to put this on Tuesday's meeting to make a decision on there because we don't have enough to do on Tuesday. But it's important to us to get this thing going and get going. So once we get contracts going, you'd be willing, or you have the ability and the staffing to get this thing going and rolling.
Sure, you bet. Again, I think the startup of these kind of projects is interesting. You want to move fast, but you also may want to set up a steering committee if not one's not set up. You want to make sure there's notification out to the public that this is happening. There's background research that the team needs to do. So we'll be able to hit that hard and go as fast as we can. Like I say, the one impediment that kind of slows things up this, you know, getting into December is the appetite for the public to engage in serious discussions.
Right. Okay.
We might have to have open houses with Christmas parties.
Hey, we'll
Be
have a new
creative.
center down here to do that.
Yeah, there you go.
Jennifer, you have any questions?
I do, thank you. Public input has been discussed a little bit, but I would like to know a little more about it. I see that in your proposal here, you do have it included in all 3 phases. But can you tell me a little bit more about what type of engagement, you know, we're looking at?
Yes, sure. And I guess that's something we'd want to talk to you. Every community is a little bit different. We'd like to know what you found the public response to and how we can engage people most effectively. And COVID does put some energy, you know, it's a wrinkle in all of this. So I will say that from our standpoint, we've been really working hard to develop tools for online engagement. So even if nowadays, I think if we have a physical in-person open house or workshop, I think you still want to have a strong online presence. And that means, you know, maybe some whiteboard, maybe some surveys. There's a number of new tools that are becoming much more effective at engaging the public, even if they don't want to come to a meeting. And that was true before. You know, a lot of people didn't like these meetings. So these new tools are very useful. I will say that our preference is for very hands-on engagement. We like people to be able to roll up their sleeves and get involved and bring their ideas. So we typically have, I think, 3 major steps. Usually you want to start by an introduction, introducing the project, letting people know what's happening and getting the information out. You want to be able to present background information so that they know, they have a sense of where the community is relative to the comprehensive planning and other activities. They want to know what types of things they're working. And then at that first workshop or open house or first phase, really, because you might have a survey in there as well, you want to ratify kind of the vision from the comp plan, make sure people are still on board with that. But you also want to drill down a little bit and say, okay, what are your goals and objectives? What do you really want this thing to be? So then that becomes grist for the mill. We typically like to have a steering committee or a task force of really key stakeholders, people that are really invested in the community. I don't mean money necessarily. I mean, you know, really are very ready to drill down on some of the interesting things, and we'd like to have them involved. So after that first workshop, we'd like to get together with staff and whoever else wants from the city, but also maybe the key stakeholders, and start to look at alternatives. What options do you have? And that's a very focused set of sessions that gets the ideas out and gives us the stuff we need to start looking at different land use patterns, different circulations, different character areas, that type of thing. And then in the second phase, we've done our analysis of what the pluses and minuses are, these things are. We present the alternatives to the public. And I call that kind of your Baskin and Robbins phase, because if you've ever taken a kid to a Baskins and Robbins with the 28 flavors, you know, you say, what flavor do you want? And they'll say, well, what do you got? And then you have to hold them up to go through all the different flavors. Anyway, that time you want people to kind of take a look at what the options are and think about what pieces they like of those options. And that's usually a very interactive work session. It can be both online or in person. And what you get out of that is a sense of what the people really think is important and what pieces of the different options you're showing them. And then later on, you come back again with the steering committee and staff and say, well, okay, here's what the people are thinking. How do we compose a land use and development plan with transportation and infrastructure and environmental things? How do we compose that into a preferred plan? And usually that's a very intense, very fun work session. And then the consultant team develops it and then you come back and work out the strategy with the steering committee and finally take that to the public and say, well, we think this is what you want, and tell us if that's true and what are your priorities? What things should we start on first and how should we start initiating this? And are you ready to step up and help us make this plan work? So it's the three big areas there with a lot of little efforts in between, whether they're interviews or directly working with staff that happen along the way. I'm sorry I went on so long, but it is a
We
process.
got it. We understand. Any other questions? Yours are answered. You got another one?
No, I don't.
Oh.
I,
Are you sure?
I am.
I know. I just want to make sure that you asked a lot of questions. I want to make sure she got a chance.
I'm good. Thank you.
We're good. All right. I appreciate you guys for coming out here and presenting tonight on this late night on a Thursday. Like I said, we won't be doing any decisions tonight. We're going to have to schedule it for our next meeting.
Well, you know two of our team members, but this is the first time I've had a chance to speak to you. If you want to check any references, we'd be happy to supply those and talk about that. Just let me know. I have a question for you. Is your motto "Hold the Vision, Trust the Pro"? Is that copyrighted? I mean, that's great. I just think that's such a perfect.
For a fee of $90,000, you can have that motto.
Oh yeah, well, I'm serious.
Gonna bill you back.
I'm just
only thing
trying to wheel and deal here.
I think that's one of the.
No,
left
you
fields.
can use that motto. It's a good motto.
Yeah,
That was a
well,
motto of our former mayor.
oh,
Yeah.
good. Well, tell him or her. I think it's a really great one.
It's a good motto. Yes,
it's what
absolutely.
you're about. Anyway, we'll call it a day. Just want to reiterate, we really would like to be a part of this project. And if there's anything else you need us to answer or have any questions, particularly some of the contractual stuff, we're there to clarify that and make sure that works.
Perfect.
Ryan
Sounds good, sir. Appreciate it very much.
Ryan and Jay, do you have anything you want to add?
I don't,
Oh.
just to thank you to the council for having us.
Yep.
Thank you all.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much. So
Okay.
we are going to conclude the presentations, right? And I don't know if you guys want to hold your discussion until Tuesday. Think about it, write down your thoughts. And then,
We can have a little bit of a discussion afterwards here.
Okay, well, I'll sign out then.
Okay.
Okay, night, everybody.
Thank you.